Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Plan First Live. I'm Sean Larkin, and I'm the Manager of Design Services at Plan First Design in Auckland. We specialize in architectural, interior designing, landscape designing, interior decorating. So for any renovation or new build, you're welcome to contact us. Our details I'll put up on the screen at the end of the presentation. Today, we're going to talk about how to landscape a small backyard. So most yards are getting smaller and smaller with overpopulation, but there's no reason why a small backyard can't be inviting and enjoyable. So let me put the presentation on the screen. Right. We're going to have a look at a couple of things today. If you've got a backyard, a lot of people tend to focus on their house and decorating the interior of their house, and even having a look at the front yard, the curb appeal of the property. So I think it's important to give as much importance to the backyard. That is actually the space where you've got a bit of privacy, outdoor privacy, and you can make it your own sanctuary. So depending on, and I hammer on this a lot, always have a look at how you live. But a couple of things we're going to look at today. If you look at the steps that you would follow if you wanted to start planning or designing a backyard, firstly, have a look, what do you want to use it for? And we'll go through all of these steps one by one. But importantly, what do you want to use it for? Have you got children? Do you need lawn to kick a ball? Do they need, climbing frames and swings and that? Do you entertain a lot? Do you want a pool? Are you an avid gardener? Do you just want a lot of garden space to plant flowers and shrubs? So make that decision first. It could be that there is more than one function. So then you would plan it in zones. So have a zone for entertaining and another zone for a lawn, etc. Then you would plan the layout, and there we'll talk about the zones, the different zones that you could have for your backyard. Then you would choose a style. And that depends, obviously, you would want it to complement with the actual house, but also depending on how much maintenance you want to do. We'll get to that later. I don't want to talk too much about that now. Then you'll have a look at the actual plants that you want to plant in the landscaped areas that you've identified. We'll look at focal points for the garden. We'll look at lighting. And then lastly, just how to make it comfortable. It's one thing to actually design it and to implement it, but you have to make sure at the end of the day that you are making it as comfortable as you can, with things like outdoor speakers. Lighting falls under that as well, because if you are entertaining in the evenings, make sure you've got lighting up the pathways, etc. So let's start with deciding what you want to use it for. So there's a couple of common zones that you would look at. The first one being a relaxation zone. And in the relaxation zone, that would be almost like a little mini sanctuary. So that would be things like lounge chairs, hammocks, shade structures, just somewhere where it's quiet, where you can go and have a bit of quiet time and quiet space that you can retreat to. Second would be the dining or barbecue areas, where you would have things like your outdoor kitchen, your grill, your table and chairs. Normally that would have a covering over it in the form of a pergola, gazebo, umbrella. And then garden space. These are for the avid gardeners. Not everybody wants an entertainment space in their backyard. Some people prefer just to have vegetables, herbs, fruits, flowers. They just really enjoy the therapeuticness of gardening, or the therapy of gardening. Then for the entertainers, you would look at things like fire pits, seating, lighting. There you've got an outdoor bar area, a grill. Make sure that you would have the planting on the outside and leave as much space as possible for the entertaining if you have got a lot of people that you do entertain. And then if you've got children, very important to have outdoor space for them. I know a lot of cities have got a lot of park areas and green space for children to play in, but it is nice to have something in your own backyard for your children. There's a little sand pit, a lot of things to just stimulate kids and get them outside so that they're not sitting inside. Very clever use in this image of part of the pergola frame is actually being used as a climbing wall. So a lot of tactile, tactile things for these kids to play with. There's grass, there's sand, the climbing wall, the swings, the slide. So this is a really good example of a kids' activity area. Next up, we'll have a look at planning the layout. So we're going to just have a look briefly at the zones that you would look at. The first one being the patio deck area. Now, usually this is the closest to the house. So you would have that very nice indoor-outdoor transition where you would go from your indoor space to your patio area, and it would almost be an extension of your living room or your lounge. And that's where your main outdoor seating would be. Secondly, you'd want, especially with a small backyard, you'd want some lawn space because that does make the garden feel a little bit bigger. So it gives you that spacious feeling. You'd have a garden bed now, particularly with small backyards or small gardens. You would keep your flower beds or your beds to the perimeter, and you would build them up in layers. So it's almost like framing the small garden with vegetation. It does give, again, that little sense of sanctuary. And then you would have a look at feature areas like your fire pits, your pergolas, water features, outdoor kitchens, depending again on what you decided in step number 1, how you want to use that space. But it's important to do the planning before the time to make sure that everything fits. Keeping in mind with a small backyard, you can't always put everything in that you want. So decide what is the most important thing for you and focus on that. Maybe have 2 or 3 things that are your importance and work around those, giving less importance to the other zones. Once you've done that, you're going to choose a style. Now, the style, I believe, should always reflect the actual house that you do have. So and also it should reflect the amount of time you've got to do maintenance in that garden. Some gardens require more maintenance than others. But style-wise, if you have a modern garden, you'd have things like ornamental grasses, a bit of lawn, straight lines, concrete. It's more minimalistic. Some nice sort of a feature lighting that we've got here. But you can see the house also has that modern style. So it's a reflection of the house actually being carried through to the garden. The water feature that they have here also has the square minimal lines. So just a good reflection. You wouldn't put an ornamental water feature in here, for instance, because that wouldn't really go with what you're trying to create. Tropical gardens, you'd have a lot of palm trees. You can try and put a bit of beach sand in. That's always a nice touch. But you'd go for a more lush garden. There is a bit more maintenance with this type of garden, but not as high in maintenance as some of the others that we'll take a look at. Rustic gardens, you're going to go for things like timber, sleepers, a lot of wood, natural stone, timber furniture. So this has got a more rustic sort of, if I can say rural, it's a strange word to use, but a more rural feel. The Mediterranean, you're going to go for something that's more gravel, and you can see that the house actually lends itself to a Mediterranean garden. you'd go for olive trees, terracotta pots, the lavender, that's quite useful in a Mediterranean setting. And pergola always looks good with a creeper that's grown on top of it, the grapes or wisteria or something like that. And then the cottage garden, I'd say this is most probably of the most high maintenance gardens that you would have. Lots of flowering plants, lots of color. It'll be very seasonal. So that is the cottage garden. Once you've had a look at your style, we always say to get a professional look in your garden, you would do layering of plants. So you would always go for your higher plants, for your trees at the back, and then your shrubs in front of that, and your lower ground covers in front of that, so that you've got a short, a medium, and a high. It gives you the best use of space, especially if you do have a small garden. Using vertical height for planting in small gardens is also very effective. So try and plant maybe some creepers against the fence. Have taller trees, so your eye is being pulled more vertically than it is horizontally, because the garden space is small. But if you have a look at this, it is a small space, but a very good use of space. This is a more sort of a rectangular modern feel to it, but you could use the same principle for the layers of planting in a more cottagey, informal setting. So again, you've got the grass, then you've got the small shrubs or what do you call these things in the front? The ground covers, shrubs further on, and then your taller trees at the back of that, just giving you that nice layering. Focal points are always a great one. So this goes hand in hand with what we said at the beginning. When you're defining what is important to you, what do you want to use the garden for? If it is going to be used for entertaining, then your focal points would automatically be things like fire pits or pergolas. If you're using things, or if your importance is your children's activities, your focal point might actually be a sandpit. So there are different things that you can do, but fire pits, very popular all over the world. Your pergola or gazebo. I do think it's very important to have some form of cover. I don't suggest having, it's very harsh to have your seating area without a cover above it. Try and make it waterproof if you can. It extends the amount of days or time that you can use that outdoor area throughout the year. If it is winter and you're not in a very cold country, you can always have either the fire pit for warmth, or you do get these gas heaters that you can put outside. But it's nice psychologically as well to just have something covering you. Water features is a good one. If you're not somebody that likes to entertain in your garden, or if you're more an indoor person, water features are great, especially at the front of your entrance as you're coming towards the front door. Now, depending on where your entrance is, sometimes your guests or yourself does enter through the backyard. So water features could be nice. It is nice having that soothing water sound running as well. Also, it does attract birds. Keeping in mind, we spoke about it a couple of sessions ago. Nice to attract birds and insects back into the garden. So have a look when you do plant your plants. Just see what do you want to attract to your garden. Is it specific insects? Plant plants that attract those insects or those birds. You can even put a couple of bird feeders up, which will attract the birds, especially if there is a water feature that they can go and have a little bit of a bath in. Feature trees, I like feature trees, especially if you have got a property that has got an existing feature tree. It's always good to keep it. Plan your your seating maybe around a feature tree. I'm not in favor of cutting trees down to make space for seating areas. Rather try and work around it and incorporate that tree into the space that you are using. So again, here it's got almost the same principle. You've got the ground cover at the bottom, a little bit of a higher, and then you've got the tree at the top. So good use of space in this image for your layers of planting. Outdoor kitchen, that could also be a great focal area. This outdoor kitchen has been very well thought through with a pergola at the top. It's really a great use of space. Very low maintenance. There's no grass, no lawn that needs mowing, but it does have enough landscaping in it that it is softened enough that it doesn't feel like a very harsh environment. Especially with those, it looks like they've got jasmine on top of that pergola. So you are softening it, but you are maximizing the use of space you have on ground level. And then garden sculptures. And not everybody's thing, but it is interesting. It's certainly a conversation point if you do have something that you want to put on display and have as a focal point. Garden sculptures are definitely something you could incorporate. Then lighting. Now, last week we spoke about lighting. We didn't focus too much on outdoor lighting, but it is very important, especially if you have outdoor entertaining. Make sure, I'd say my number one advice on this topic would be make sure that your paths leading to your outdoor entertaining are lit up. If you do have stairs or a deck, make sure that those are lit up as well. At night, lighting up where people or public are walking for safety is extremely important. And then what I like to do as well is put lighting within the garden itself. So you've got lighting actually shining out through the garden, through the actual flower bed, which lights up the green. It just gives it that bit of vibrancy to that space. You can use string lights as well. I know that's not everybody's thing, or you can use these fairy lights in trees, also does look quite nice. Just again, make sure that you do light up the paths and steps, especially at night. And then make sure that it's comfortable. So it's one thing to actually do the design, implement it, have a nice garden, but then make sure you make it your own. If you are outside a lot and you like listening to music, have some outdoor speakers, or again, that water feature. The water feature doesn't need to be big. The water feature can just be there as background, soothing, having running water. It is always very therapeutic. Make sure you've got shade cover in whatever form suits you, whether it be an actual hardscape roof, be it an umbrella, be it a shade cloth, a awning, a pergola just with planting over it. Just make sure you have some kind of protection from the sun. Then you can also put rugs outside if it makes it more comfortable. Nice cushions on your couches, make it a comfortable living space so that you don't sit in an uncomfortable chair. I always feel that your outdoor area should be an extension of your indoor area. So the couch should be just as comfortable as your indoor couch. And then I've got a couple of questions that I have been asked. So I'm just going to run through them. We're not going to do live questions today. We are slightly pressed for time. But one of the questions I did get is, can a small backyard really be transformed into a functional outdoor space? And I would say yes, but the trick is do the planning first and make sure your zones are planned well. And if it is really small, you can see in this image, in fact, they've actually used it quite successfully. Use vertical planting so that you don't need as much horizontal space to get the same effect. Keep your horizontal space then for your functional spaces. And also, if you have got a deck, for instance, turn the decking diagonal at 45 degrees so that it just makes that space feel a little bit bigger. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, this is actually just what I've spoke about. Are decks a good idea for small backyards? Yes, they are. And also what I like about decks is that it does define the area. So you don't want your whole backyard to be one finish. As you break it up into your zones, let those zones, they must speak to each other, but let them also have their own identity. So a deck is a really good way to identify your dining zone or your lounge or lounging seating area. Then you would have lawn. If you have a little bit of, even a small lawn can be great for children. They just need to be able to actually ground themselves and run barefoot on the grass, sit and play in the sand, whatever it is. It really doesn't need to be big rolling lawns. What else have I got here? Can I create a modern design in a tiny backyard? Yes, you actually can use, whenever you're doing a modern design, go for straight angular lines, go for things like concrete, straight hedges. Try and stay away for organic shapes. That works better with other styles. So with the moderns, I'd say stick more with the straight lines and a more formal garden, structured garden. Are small backyard transformations expensive? Not necessarily. If you work cleverly, you can do it on a low, if I can call it a low budget. Just make sure you work smart. Do the planting yourself. You can always get a designer to do the planting layout for you and to just guide you on when to plant, what month is the best to plant what plants. Do the planting yourself, do the maintenance yourself. It really doesn't need to break the bank. And just smart layouts go a very long way without having to spend your entire life savings on it. What is the biggest mistake people make with small backyards? I think trying to cram too much into it. So be realistic about the space that you've got. If it is a reasonably small space, if you can only fit, let's call it 2 zones into that space, only fit 2 zones into that space. Don't overcrowd with plants. You've got to, when we spoke about the mood board, I said, take 40 images. And from those 40 images, start eliminating until you're left with maybe 5 or 6. And do the same with a backyard design. You can always start with your wish list and your master plan, but realistically then try and taper it down. And you can get somebody, I would suggest getting a landscape designer or a professional designer to actually do the design for you. And then, once you've got the design, you can always do it in phases. And a lot of it you can DIY yourself. Those elements that you can DIY yourself. You don't necessarily have to do it all in one go. Do it in stages, but get the planning right. The planning is the most important part of it. Keeping in mind as well, a lot of time, if you are doing landscaping, you get different size plants. So you would get the younger plants, which are obviously the smaller plants, and then you would get the more mature plants, especially if you're looking at things like trees. So you can build that planting plan around your budget. You don't have to go for the more mature trees if it doesn't align with your budget. Go for the smaller plants and accept that it will just take a little bit of time for them to grow. But, time goes so quickly. Before you know it, those plants will be mature. And you will have that lovely backyard that you've been wanting. I just want to have a look if there's Other questions here that I haven't touched on. How can I make my small backyard look bigger? Use things like light colored paving. You'll see in this image they've got light colored flooring. Also, the vertical planting is important. Just you don't need your flower bed. If you plan carefully, your flower bed doesn't need to take up a lot of horizontal space, a lot of footprint. Just do it in those layers. Trees, if you've got one tree in that area that you can use maybe as a focal point, it immediately softens that whole area. So just do the planning properly and make sure that the outcome is exactly what you want it to be. Don't always let other people persuade you to do something you don't want to do. Make sure if you want a modern garden, let it be a modern garden, and do a bit of research as well. Put things like ornamental grasses in. You wouldn't necessarily put a lot of flowering plants into a modern garden. So just make sure that you align your plants with your style. That's quite important. You can get away with things like star jasmine on a pergola, even if you are going for a modern look. So just be mindful of those sorts of things. Small splash pools, absolutely, you can put them into a small backyard. Again, just plan them nicely. Put them into one of the zones. Don't let them be in the center so that haven't got enough space for what you want to put around it. Plan it sensibly, put it to one side. You can maybe put a long lap pool in if that's all you've got space for, or you can put it right at the back so that the garden actually frames that pool and that becomes your focal point, which we didn't even speak about in the focal points, but you can actually absolutely have your swimming pool or your splash pool as your focal point. So first and foremost, do your master plan. Make sure that everything is planned properly, designed properly, everything is in its place before you actually start implementing anything. And then I always say, when you're doing that master plan, have your budget drawn up simultaneously so that you have your actual design, you have your actual budget, know what it's going to cost you up front, and then tailor it to see, are you going to do everything at the same time? Are you going to break it up into stages and phases? If you are going to do that, what are you going to do first? You know, have your plan. The worst thing that you can do is to actually start with the implementation of your master plan, and then you find, oh, you've run out of budget, and then the project stands. So try not to do that. Plan it properly. Outdoor spaces for me are as important as the indoor spaces of your home, and have that indoor-outdoor transition as well. Again, depending on how your family live, it's important to have outdoor space for children as well if you have got small children. Once your children get to the stage that they don't need the sand pits and the swings and the slide, you can always transform that space into something else and then maybe put the fire pit in that you've been wanting. So it can grow with you as your family grows. You can change it as time goes by. Important thing, the trees you wouldn't want to move later. So make sure your trees are in places that they will be staying there. You won't need to dig them up. And we'll go more into certain aspects of what we spoke about today in the next, in future broadcasts. Next week's topic that I want to just talk about a little bit is the do's and don'ts of bathroom design. We've spoken a bit about the materials that you would use in bathrooms, but now we're going to have a look at the actual do's and don'ts of the design, placement of fixtures, why you would use certain fixtures in certain instances. And yeah, that's our topic for next week. Again, if you've got any questions or you want to contact us, keeping in mind that we specialize in renovations and new builds, residential. Our details are on the screen. Feel free to give us a call anytime. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.